Hey, what's up, everyone? Hope everyone is doing well. I always feel like I'm used to like saying, "Hey, it's Ben Standig here," but you can see me, and if you're on, of course, Substack, you're in this live chat. You're aware of who you're here for. Hope everybody is doing well. I think my guy Mike Smelts is going to join us momentarily. Oh, there he is. Look at that. Perfect. What's up? What's on your hand?
Oh, uh, you can see this? You can see this devastating injury, Ben?
Yeah, are you on IR?
Yeah, I just broke a glass and I tried to clean it up with my bare hand. That's how much of a man I am, Ben. And then so I cut my finger. And the only band-aids I have in my house are like children's band-aids. So it's very professional over here right now. How are you?
I'm good. By the way, you've got like this alfalfa from the Little Rascals thing going on up top.
Up top?
No, right in the front area. Yeah. Oh, you're
Sorry.
good now.
That's how the kids are wearing it these days, Ben. Come on.
Oh, look,
Catch up.
I'm not. I'm definitely not here to tell somebody about their hair. It's not like I got a lot going on here working for us, but I just wanted to make sure my guy was looking good. How's it going, man? I appreciate you doing this. Haven't seen you face to face in a minute. How's you guys? You survived over there with the kids in the weather and all that stuff?
Yeah, it's been awesome. I love it. I love the ice. The ice is the best. How about you? Wait, have you gotten out of your
Oh
house
my
yet?
god. Yes, I have. I like 5 days into it, I was on with JP and B Mitch, and JP asked me, he's like, "Okay, I know you well enough to know I'm gonna ask this. Have you got your car out yet?" And usually I'm pretty good about that stuff, but in this case, because of the way it happened, like, was it snow first, then the freezing rain? I did the snow, but not the freezing rain, and then by the time I went back out, it was, like, ice, and I was like, "You know what? I'm just gonna wait. I don't have to be anywhere." So, I did eventually get it out, but yeah.
I'm very proud. Yeah, it's I'm so excited for this all to be done. I can't wait. I'm like I'm and also like, it's perfect time because this is the old school Redskins season. This is when we shine. This is when it used to be fun to be a Redskins fan. Now Commanders. Free agency,
It
draft, LeVar Arrington, Chris Samuels, the best. Oh, we're back. We're back.
I assumed that this was always part of the deal with Snyder, but from a purely marketing perspective, it was always a great deal. You go out and make big splashes in the offseason. People always said the Commanders won the offseason, all that stuff. It gets people excited. It gets people to buy tickets to think, oh, why, we've got these guys. And then it took a few years to realize, oh, this formula is a complete and utter disaster. So, there you go. Um,
Dude,
we do have a lot
Ben,
to get into here. And I'm actually curious to hear what's interesting to you because I've been saying that for a few days. So first off, obviously I do the podcast Last Man Standing. I've been on local radio hosting 3 of the last 4 days. I am completely talked out in the sense of like I don't want to hear myself anymore, but obviously so I want to know what other people think and you being top of the list of the other people. So what's on Mike Smeltz's brain? Because also like this is a purely speculative time. The draft is way away. We don't know what's going to free agency is going to happen, but we don't have a lot of data on free agency, like what anybody's thinking. So it's hard, and we know they have 100 needs. Like I don't even know where to go. So you tell me what's top of mind for you as we're getting into here.
I mean, this is not the most urgent discussion right now. It is draft related. It's like I'm already bristling at the trade down mafia that is forming around this pick. Oh, we don't have they don't have a second round pick, right? Oh,
Correct.
we don't have a second round pick. We must trade down. Oh my god, we have to trade down. I'm like, listen, I understand trading down is probably on par the best path when you look at the averages, you look at the value and all that kind of stuff. I am anti trade down. I think this team needs blue chip player. I think they're going to be in position to get a blue chip player. And so I'm already getting furious when I hear people begging for a trade down. It's like, oh my God, if we could drop down to 20 and pick up a second round pick. And it's like, that always sounds good, except when you get to that second round and it's like, oh, the player we have is Malcolm Kelly. Like, get out of here. I don't want to see it. So that's I mean, I'm so interested in the draft. Like I look at every mock. obsess over whether they're going to get David Bailey and Ruben Bain. I like both. I love both. I think they're both amazing. I think they will get a shot at one of those two guys. And I think if you walk out of the first round, so like I'm deep in draft strategy right now, Ben, because that's what I
Uh,
really, really care about.
no, I hear you. I'm trying to pull up one of my recent mocks. Even though I've only shown round one mocks, I have been doing
Sure.
sort of 2 round mocks. Because I
Oh,
think doing the second round is helpful to understand the first round, if that makes sense, because you can see where the fault lines are in terms of the certain positions or where values are. I mean, I am generally speaking on team trade down, just to be
man,
clear.
man,
I mean,
you're ruining
well, I
your
mean,
life. Don't do that.
uh, well, I mean, look, they need bodies. I think the question is like when they're at 7, do they think pick your player, Ruben Bain, Caleb Downs, whomever, is that player truly a difference maker, right? Like somebody, because like I think defensively they've got to get. I don't care what position it is really. Somebody that the other team has to pay attention to. Somebody that you can sort of build your defense around the scheme to maximize. We want to get this player open, available, whatever to make plays. They certainly don't have that and haven't had that for a minute. But otherwise, they've got to get so many bodies, and with only 2 picks in the top 100, for as regardless of their actions, I do believe that they still want to build through the draft, and free agency is helpful, but only to a degree. So um, they got to get more picks. But yeah, there will be a couple of guys if they're sitting there at 7. You're like, oh man, nah, I don't know if I want to trade down now.
Well, and we could talk about. There's some great questions in the chat, and we'll get to those. And I do think that there's a line where it's sort of like the old NBA thing where like this is a three-player draft. Let's say not that this draft is, but it's like a three-player draft. I remember when the Nets traded the fourth overall pick because they said it was a three-player draft, and I think that was like maybe the Steph Curry, Johnny Flip. The Wizards obviously traded in that draft. They traded for Randy Foy and Mike Miller. They could have
Too
had
soon. Still
Steph
too soon.
Curry. They could have had any number of players at that time of the draft. Maybe this draft, I'm looking at Tankathon's mock draft. I love Tankathon just from a organization standpoint. It really helps me organize the thoughts.
By the way,
Yeah.
as you both of us are the athletic alumni, I don't know why the Athletic does not buy Tankathon. Like to me, this is
Ben,
the like if I was going to start a site, I would start Tankathon.
Ben, I
Like
brought
it's
it up
all
in meetings. Trust me. I did.
oh, did you? Okay.
I said we should buy Tankathon. I mean, this is like so arrogant. I don't know where the money comes from. We should buy Tankathon. We should buy the reference sites. And like, you should just like, they have such utility. Like the athletic app should have utility. Like, not to, if that app's not very, doesn't offer much beyond the written journalism and now it has some video. I thought it should be injected with utility. Like, if I'm a sports fan, the athletic should have the best trade machine. Like, I use
Yep.
trade machines every day. I,
Uh,
you know,
oh, no, see, so if somebody mentions here Spotrac or over the cap, yeah, that too. Like to me, if I was going to start a site, it would be essentially mock drafts and recruiting rankings. Like it would be nothing but that because honestly, that is all that anybody really cares about. The games happen, but day in, day out, that is what people want. But it is what it is. What it is. So I would have done that. That would have been my call. But anyway,
okay. So I think that there's for sure the trade down debate. I think there's a line if like you don't see, let's say they have like how these boards work. They're like, here's the 4 prospects in this tier. Fernando Mendoza is not even on our board because we're not going to draft quarterback, which is
sure.
something Ron Rivera did in his first draft. And they were like, we're gonna draft Chase Young. Forget Justin Herbert, obviously let's not talk about Tua. But let's say it's like Reese, Bain, Caleb Downs, and David Bailey are like your cluster of defensive players. And for whatever reason, they all go. I don't think Caleb Downs is going to go before 7. He's a safety. It's very unlikely. Um,
Ironically, I'm not even kidding you. Within the last 10 minutes, somebody I know who is currently doing a mock draft at just was like saying that in the mock draft, all 4 of those guys you just said are gone by 7. And,
What?
what do you do?
All
Because
right, so
basically
that
they didn't
means
take sounds like they didn't take the offensive lineman.
okay. Well, is Carnell Tate in that top 7?
Carnell Tate was available.
All right, I'm anti Carnell Tate. I don't think he's special enough to be the 7th overall pick, particularly when actually I like Jordan Tyson better. I think Makai Lemon is. I actually think he's probably also a better wide receiver. I understand the difference with Tate is like he could be what Brian Thomas Jr. should be, right? Which is like the tall, deep ball threat. Of course, that is so appealing, but it's like the whole thing. He hasn't been the best wide receiver on his team. Now he's playing with Jeremiah Smith, a generational prospect. I'm not in on Cardinal Tate as what's your Tate? Have you done any Tate tape yet? And do you have any Tate thoughts?
I don't really have enough quite yet, just in terms of, like, the general broad terms, like, Jordan Tyson's, like, the crazy athlete, Lemon is the slot guy, and Tate is more like he's the classic, like, tall receiver. I don't know, like, he has the same upside per se, but maybe I mean, in general, it's hard for me to get excited about a receiver at 7 because until they do free agency, it's hard to say, well, don't take something that's not defense. So that would be, as it stands today, not particularly exciting. That's where trading down to me becomes paramount. Because even if you do want a receiver, there should be like one of those top 3 guys probably falls into the early teens, and then you have the kid Boston out of University of Washington is there, and there's some receivers. There could be like 5 or 6 receivers go round 1. So if that's the board, the top those defensive guys are gone, and you're looking at Tate, I would probably try to trade down for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
But that's
I mean,
me.
there's so much to dig into, like who would be the teams, how far back you'd want to go. Here's my overall thought. Okay, and this is not a slanderous thing at Adam Peters, but I'm going to slander him slightly. Okay, which is I think there's a little bit of arrogance sometimes with the moves that they make, and what I hope doesn't happen is like they're like, we'll trade down because we're so confident in our draft evaluation skills that our organization having a later first round pick, we feel as confident that we'll get a guy we like there, and that having this second round pick will be amazing. That may be true. Like if they fall back to, let's say, the late teens, early 20s, you get Falk out of Auburn, who's like the 6'6", 270 defensive end,
Right.
not incredibly productive, but Auburn was a really good defense and he was the best defensive lineman on that defense. You get him, and then obviously in the second round, you get, a linebacker, like let's say someone everyone's really excited about. My problem is I don't want the thinking of like, because they think they're good, of course they think they're good, that we are like the statistical trump card in this scenario. To me, the best statistic plan, the best analytical plan is being like, we're going to draft someone really high that is like, we feel so good about. And we're just going to take a guy that we think is going to be a Pro Bowler, and like we believe in it. We believe in it more than believing a guy in like the late teens, Hal from Texas A&M, or anyone else who's sort of in that like second to third tier pass rusher. Like they needed, I mean, I'm almost like they need to take a pass rush. Someone, as Steve Robinson said, not much talk of Washington taking a corner at 7, but surely has to be under consideration if both pass rushers are gone at 7, which does get into that debate. But it's like, corner does need help. I just think they just need they need a defensive end who is exciting, and you typically need to pay up to get that guy. Needs to be up high.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
No, I hear it. So, what's interesting is, I'm the rare person that was a big fan of the process what the 76ers did under, of course, Josh Harris. And I think what's always misunderstood about the process is that it isn't just about getting the draft pick, right? I mean, every team has one first round pick. So it's not just about getting that first round pick as high as possible to get whoever the best player you think can be in the draft. It's also about manipulating your roster so that you take on other people's garbage and get other picks, right? You're a way station for other stuff. And the reasoning is because it's an understanding that our evaluations are flawed, that we are not going to bat 1,000 or anything close to it, and you need to have as many bites at the apple as possible. Now, the NBA is, of course, a little bit different. There's only a handful of players on the court, 5 guys on the court at any time, only about 6 or 7 guys who really matter for any given team at any given moment. The NFL isn't like that, though, right? Like in the third round, whoever they get could be their starting cornerback this year, or they could be their, you know, somebody who's in the high in the rotation or plays. So I think trading down, again, if you think that Caleb Downs or Ruben Bain is all that, well, then don't pass. But you better be confident in your evaluation skills, because otherwise, the better move is to take as many shots as possible. And this is a draft where, your point was like, well, sometimes we say it's like a 3-player draft or whatever if we're talking basketball.
Yeah.
That, in general terms, means that we don't really know what to make of all these other guys. That, yeah, we like some of them, but we feel like the variance on them is pretty significant. Whereas, like, to use this current NBA draft, it appears that people are saying uh, that those top 3 or 4 guys look to be potential studs, number 1 players on a team, right? So it would be hard to pass on that to then go down and get multiple stuff. So I'm okay if they trade down, if they're just not that confident that whoever is there at 7 is all that and will be enough of a difference maker.
Get confident. Get better at scouting then, Ben.
Well, you're
Get
saying
confident.
you're
Get
you're digging
confident.
them
I
for,
know, I know, I know. It's the
yeah,
exact
yeah, so I'm saying,
opposite
like,
of what I just
it's
said.
yeah, yeah. But by the way, speaking of the basketball, just really quick, I see Cameron Smith here saying, he talking about the Wizards quickly, and he says that Bram Weinstein is convinced that AD and Trae Young moves are part of an impatient push to compete by Leonsis. I'm not gonna get into that here, but I will say, ironically, just this morning, like 2 hours ago or so, I was on Bram's podcast. At the end of it, we discussed exactly this topic. I set him straight. So you can go listen to Bram's podcast
Oh.
for that. I've also talked about this a bunch on my own podcast over the last week or so since I made the trade. So you can check that out. But I just want to ignore it. But yeah, I set Bram straight. I got you, Cameron. Um, yeah, no, look, I mean, I think that's going to be the interesting thing. Here's, and I will say also, like, if it does start to be some momentum at some of these guys, especially if somehow a quarterback could get involved, which I don't know if that's gonna happen, but, if there is a strong push for some of these players, that could benefit Washington the most in terms of making a trade, and I really do think that they need to figure out, ideally, I would like them to trade down. Whether they
Well,
do.
yeah, I think the best case scenario for a trade down is like it is that situation actually which you outlined, which is like all the defensive players are gone and there are the 3 wide receivers, and there's a belief from a contender, the Buffalo Bills. It's the classic what the Atlanta Falcons did when they traded up for Julio Jones. It's there's a contender who is a really good quarterback who thinks if we get the top wide receiver in the draft, that it is going to change. Sorry, I'm turning on my oven virtually right now. Um,
Wow.
that it changes the fortunes of our team. And I do think that there's a lot of interesting cases for that. Obviously, KC being one. San Francisco, even though they have Ricky Pearsall, but Brandon Ayuk's going to be gone. San Francisco's at 27 overall. Obviously, Adam Peters, the Commanders have traded already with San Francisco. Adam Peters' his own place. Um, so there are these teams. If you're the Patriots and you're sitting there, you're like, Diggs, who knows what's going to happen with Diggs because of all of his legal issues right now, that maybe he's going to, you know, not be on the team next year. Who knows? They may be motivated to trade. Uh, I, I just see it happening. But like, it gets to that point where like we all love a trade down. Like, listen, I do probably every day. I'll do a fake mock draft on one of those like draft database or PFF. I'm trading down in the mock because it's so fun to see what you get. But in the end, what you get is like a collection of dudes who you don't have that much confidence in. Where I do think Bailey and Bain are like sure thing impact players, whether they're Micah Parsons, whether they're a Bosa, whoever, I don't know. Who are they? I think they're better than Chase Young will be. How about that? So I think between the Chase Young scale and the Nick Bosa scale, I think these guys are in the middle of that at least, because they're ultra productive. They're like dudes, like when like Bane it was like an animal, and Bailey was so impactful in the biggest stretch of Texas Tech season. So like I'm all in on those guys, and I don't really care about their body concerns as much. Like I'm having a little more faith in Dan Quinn again, who's taken a guy with a body concern in Micah Parsons, not your traditional body, to turn that guy into a pass rusher. So anyway, I'm that's kind of where all this is coming from. If I didn't believe in those two guys, then I would be like, oh yeah, trade down, Randall. Let's just do it. You know?
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, all things being equal, if one of those pass rushers is sitting there, it would be hard to pass on them, and maybe Caleb Downs the same. So I'm with you on that. By the way, in when I sent out the notification we were going to do this in the thread, I said to people, hey, if you can't make it, there'll be the replay. And Thad Galvin said, hey, I can't. One of our subscribers says he couldn't make it, but he did ask a question, which is somewhat pertinent to this, and that is, he says, I've been debating this with my son. If Bailey, Downs, Bain, and he throws in Sonny Styles, the Ohio State linebacker,
Mhm.
are gone, is it crazy for Washington to take Notre Dame running back Jeremiah Love at
Oof.
7? Now, from a
Ooh.
purely like rank the prospects, like he may very well be a top 2, 3 guy for some people on their board. And you could look at it like, hey, the Detroit Lions a few years ago, right? They were criticized for taking Jahmyr Gibbs pretty high. And obviously that worked out incredibly well for them. And, we know they need a receiver. They also could use an upgraded running back, even though I think Bill is, showed enough last year to be like, okay, I can run this back with him again, and we'll see what else they have around him. That to me is one where, like, if we're going to play this game of all those defensive guys are out of the mix, what do you do? I, I struggle taking a running back for a team that I don't think is one player away, right? I've made this point to Eagles for years and years and years under Harry Roseman, just went kind of base level running backs, guys like DeAndre Swift or, good players, but nobody who's all that. When Saquon Barkley became available, they said, the heck with this plan. He's going to put us over the top. Obviously, that worked out incredibly well. I just don't think Washington is there. I just think their defense is so far removed, it appears, from being competitive that you could do it. But that said, if Jeremiah Love is truly the next guy, pairing him with Jaden Daniels, with McLaurin, they'll get some receiver help somewhere. I mean, it could be pretty fun, but I just don't know if I can go there.
Yeah, like in that scenario, Commanders are at 7. Jeremiah Love is on the board. All those like top tier defenders are off the board. That's where I'd really like Peters to go. So after them is the Saints, who
Right.
are potentially a Jeremiah Love team. And then it's Kansas City, who that feels sort of like the most natural, like it, Chiefs bump back. They get this like awesome piece in the backfield that like
Yeah.
propels them forward. Though the
It's
Chiefs
like
have been burned by a running back before, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Remember after the Super Bowl, and he
that was just a
never.
bad pick. This doesn't
Yeah,
feel like that would be, but also this feels like sort of like the Spurs losing David Robinson and then to get the number 1 pick to get Tim Duncan. The Chiefs going like landing a top 10 pick and then getting a running back who is a 3 down threat for a team that has not been able to run the ball in like 3 years feels like, oh no, that would be
yeah,
way too much. So maybe you could get a trade out of that.
and so like in this scenario, like what I would be cool with is that trade from like 7 to 9 so the Chiefs can jump ahead of the Saints to get and maybe like the Commanders pick up like that 3rd round pick, or something. It's not that massive of a deal, but it doesn't ultimately affect the Commanders' ability to get a really good player. And the way to get real, so it's like there's two things. There's people are bringing up the Chris Olave trade. Cam Smith in the chat did, and I've always been. I think I am like Cameron, where it's like I've been burned by this idea, this obsession with trading down, because we get very excited, and that trade yielded John Dotson, Brian Robinson Jr., and Sam Howell. Right? I think that was ultimately, and so Sam Howell ended up. That was a pretty good draft pick, right? He he was fine. B-Rob did okay, and Dotson was a disaster. So he had a bunch of touchdowns his rookie year, and then he was a disaster. So, and Olave has had health problems, but this year again turned back into one of the best wide receivers in football, and he was one of the better wide receivers when he was a younger player too. So like, I'm just burned by this idea of that, like, oh, if you just move down a little bit, you get your chance at a bunch of more players. Like, well, sometimes those players stink, and the hit
You
rate on
know,
those
again,
players are really minimal. It's like if you add up the hit rate on the seventh overall pick versus the 16th, the 51st, and the 112th, the percentages of those three picks maybe don't even add up to the seventh pick. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. So that's kind of where I sit. It's like I'd rather have a thing I can count on that I really need. This draft has those two edges. Hopefully they're there versus like falling to 17 and being like, okay, we maybe kind of like Falk from Auburn. You know what I mean? We've talked about it, but
yeah. I mean, as is always the case, there's the hypothetical, what would you do in these scenarios? And then there's the specific, what will this team do in this scenario? Like, I didn't have an issue per se them trading down, although I would have taken Kyle Hamilton. This was my pick when I did my own
yes.
Commanders mock draft. That was my call. I admit I was not as high on Olave, but that was in part because they had McLaurin and Curtis Samuel already, regardless of what I thought of Curtis Samuel per se. But okay, they already made that investment to then trade down and take Jahan Dodson. Because what? Because he had this catch radius and you had Carson Wentz, who you were basically saying is not an accurate thrower. So we're gonna bring in a third wide receiver. Well, that was stupid. You're not. Why are you having a third receiver you're investing in when you're not like going to be a heavy passing team per se? But okay, that was that problem. Um, so I like that's the difference between like I said the hypothetical versus the specific. I'm not sitting here and telling you I have like 100% faith that Adam Peters will do the right thing. But at least, like, look, last year's draft, by and large, looks like it went pretty well, right? I mean, Kane Madrano was the only one who didn't do anything, and he just didn't play. All the other four guys, I think we're sitting here going to this year going, oh, okay. They all look to be pretty interesting. We'll see about Jalen Lane as a receiver, et cetera. So, I don't have an issue with them. Like I said, if they think they have the right guys, if they want to trade down, so be it. By the way, speaking of Sam Howell, you may be more on this than I am because you are Mr. Social Media. So have you seen this thing about Kevin Durant's burner account?
Yes. I'm still trying to wrap my arms around it. Like there seems to be a lot of different threads. So I'm still it feels like Watergate. Like there's a lot of threads. We're trying to follow the money a little bit, but yes.
So apparently, whatever the account that the people believe was Kevin Durant's burner account, the real news is that he apparently was like dumping on some of his current teammates even
Yeah.
in this, and that's obviously probably doesn't go over well if it's true. But as we know, Kevin Durant is a fan of this team, and he apparently from that account back in 2024 was tweeting about Marvin Harrison. Come on down, we'll go with Sam Howell and bring in another receiver as opposed to going with Jaden Daniels. So should that be true, that would, that's
Dude,
not ideal.
KD basically ran the Brooklyn Nets with like the end of bench signings, and they were all bad. So he doesn't know what he's doing. I love Kevin. I love Kevin Durant so much, but I think Jaden Daniels worked out. Though Ben, should they trade Jaden Daniels right now? Um, First overall pick, trade him to the Raiders. What do you think? You know, Herschel Walker deal. You get the Raiders entire. Or would this have been the Ricky Williams? What was the Commanders Redskins trade for Ricky Williams? Didn't the Redskins get every pick or something? Pretty much.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Would you take the
like,
entire Raiders draft over Jaden Daniels, or would you rather have Jaden Daniels?
that's a fun question. It's a very fun
So
question.
you get Fernando Mendoza. You have your seventh pick, and then you get like you get I think it's like the fourth pick in the second round, the first pick in the third, or the third pick in the third round,
The
the second
Raiders
pick in
have
the fourth.
10 picks, so just for argument's sake, let's just say they get 7, like a full draft, we could debate which ones. I mean, it's a fun thought exercise. I don't think I could do it, but it's a
Yeah.
like, I think in part is, like,
Maybe.
I don't know what I think of Mendoza. I think, like, in talking to, like, people about where he would fit into the 2024 draft class, the sense I get from more people is he's not in those top 3 guys, like, at all, that it's more in there the Bo Nix, the Penix, we'll see. And you might think, well, Bo Nix, I mean, he's had 2 really, really good years. Yes, but I don't know though if we're ranking all the quarterbacks in the league and people go, "Where does Bo Nix rank?" I don't think
Yeah.
Bo Nix is necessarily in the top half of the league. I just
Well,
think he's been good, he's been fine, and they've had obviously a really good defense. So I don't know that I'd doing this to get Mendoza and then, yeah, it's a fun thought
I
though,
okay. I love Mendoza, and I'll say about quickly about Bo Nix is that he has like the best coach to prop up a quarterback in the NFL. Like, Sean Payton, that one year he had with Russell Wilson, like Russell Wilson's stats were like pretty good. And and he hated Russell Wilson. He hated him and couldn't wait to get him out of town. Um, but if Bo Nix was playing against the Patriots, I think the Broncos would have been in the Super Bowl.
for sure.
And that would have been a better game, I think, than what we saw. Um, I would not trade Jaden, but it would be the most NBA style NFL trade because it would be like there's always those prospects who maybe do well early. Like who was the guy from Memphis who played guard, Memphis College, Memphis Tigers? He was a guard who was like could fill up the stat sheet, went to the NBA. I'm gonna have to think of him. And then his body broke down, and then he became like a nobody player. I'm gonna look him up, but basketball alumni. And I'm gonna he let's say he was in the league like 10 years ago. Does anything come to
Tyreek
mind?
Tyreek Evans.
Yes. Yes.
Tyreek Evans, like,
So
he basically, if he didn't win Rookie of the Year, he was basically Rookie of the Year, and he had, like, a football player's body, yes, but then, yeah, he was
and then but then his body kind of just broke down and all that stuff. I'm just saying, I'm not saying that's gonna happen. I love Jaden. I love Jaden so much. I'm just saying it would be they're not gonna do this. This is just all fantasy land. I'm just saying if the lean internally is like Jaden will never be healthy ever, 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 that this is the time to do it. Trade the Raiders, get the whole draft. You get Fernando Mendoza, you restart the rookie clock, you get all these picks, and you go on. But no, everyone would be mad, and it would be the most shocking like draft day trade ever, right? So
yeah,
it would
sorry.
it would be fun
No,
for
look,
your Substack.
it is an interesting enough exercise that I am now going to look at it, and maybe I'll use it as a, podcast topic, or I'm actually back on local radio on Thursday, and, you never know what the heck you're gonna talk about there, so maybe
There
that's
you
a,
go.
fun topic, but yeah, in general, I'm with you, like, if I got the quarterback unless the doctors are telling me, "Dude, Jaden's not gonna be able to stay healthy, flat out move on," I would struggle to make that move, but it's interesting
Yeah.
especially
Okay.
for a team that has 100 holes and, you know and hey, look, they don't even have to take Mendoza if they don't want, they could wait till next year when everybody it's always the next year when people say is the great draft, quarterback class.
Well, can I ask you about uh because I am interested how the Commanders are going to use that all the dollars they have in free agency. Who's the big guys that they have to resign besides not counting Tunsil, like because that's a different bucket. I mean, guys who are free agents. Who are the people that they have to resign that should be back or they would want to come back?
Yeah, it's a great question. I did, on Monday's podcast, I had, Al Galdi on with me, and we did a draft, just every other pick of the Washington's free agents. This is like what we would want. Who would we want back? And look, I mean, if you didn't listen, it was a fun listen. But here are the first few picks, and this was factoring in the money, right? So you couldn't just say Debo Samuel because ignoring the money. You have to factor in Marcus Mariota, Jacob Martin, Chris Rodriguez, Andrew Wiley, Chris Paul, Bobby Wagner. You debate the order if you want, but that was like the top. Debo came later, but like
Yeah.
there, there's nobody we were going, wow, if they lose this guy, this is a disaster. But so yeah, in terms of their own guys, this should not be a break the bank situation by any stretch. Like, could they have some competition with Mariota for his services? Perhaps, but again, what are we talking about here? Like,
Yeah.
$10 million a year at the most. Like,
Is Bobby
yeah,
Wagner going to play football?
he sounded like a guy at the end of the last year that wanted to, yeah. And look, I think he was pretty effective. Again, we focus so much on the passing part of it, the coverage, which obviously not a strength, but he was still really good as just a flat out tackler. Not to mention all the his instincts and all those things. So, um, yeah, I would guess he plays. Whether he plays
Okay.
here, we'll see.
Yeah, it's funny, they someone Steve says it's a depressingly weak list that Ben and Al just went through, and I agree. It's a pretty dark, but it's, like, kind of a good thing. Last year, there was this pressure to resign Ertz, to resign Wagner because they were so crucial to the team, and if Bobby Wagner signed with whoever, I would be, "Thank God he came here," but I'd also be like, "Okay." I wouldn't be that upset. I It's funny because obviously him and Luvu did so well that first year together. I don't think they can play together going forward unless Luvu is like strictly a pass rusher. Because you can't have two linebackers that can't cover at all on the
Yeah,
field. Like if you look at, I mean, just look at what the Seahawks did. I think they ran nickel more than any team in the NFL. Yeah, they ran like the 4-2-5 like constantly. Um, it's it's just I know that Commanders basically ran a two linebacker situation a lot too, but I just why I say all that is like it's interesting to me about what they could do in free agency. And I will say it was funny because the guys they signed, like Will Harris last year, who gets hurt, Jones, who gets hurt, they come back and like the team got better when they were on the field, later in the season. They also got better because Dan Quinn was calling the defense, So, but those free agent signings actually worked. It's just they didn't play. Like, Dietrich Wise was working and then he gets hurt. So, Adam Peters like may want to look at the situation and be like, we made good moves. They all got hurt. I think the problem is that you're relying on older players. And when you sign older players, they're more likely to get hurt. They're slower and limited. And so my hope is the strategy of like, they may have to overpay for a few of the guys who are coming into that second contract who should be in their relative prime versus like the 29-year-olds who may be cheaper. You can get more of them, but half of them are going to get hurt in like 2 games. Even though 29 feels so young, Ben, but it's for football. It's they're dinosaurs.
I have to remind myself sometimes when we talk about people like Wagner and Ertz, and like, oh my god, they're so decrepit, and I'm like, oh my god, they're like, you know, 20 years younger than me, give or take. I mean, it's really sad. Um, for For sure. All right, hold on. There's a couple before we get
Yeah, yeah.
asking questions here. So let me get into a few here, just because obviously we want people to ask questions. And by the way, I greatly appreciate everybody for doing this. It was impromptu. One day I'll get on like a better schedule. I'm just so all over the place with all the things I got to get done, and I love having Mike on. He's got his own life going on, so I can't
It was
always
such a
claim to him.
joy.
I will do my best to sort of organize things a little bit better. Let's see here. Steve Robinson asked earlier, not much talk of Washington taking a corner at 7, but surely it has to be under consideration if both the top rushers are gone. Look, I mean, they have right now, obviously, Trey Amos, who I think we all generally feel pretty good about, but we'll see. Sanders still is he the slot? Is he the outside? I think that's a huge question that I would love to know what Durante Jones thinks about that. Beyond that, they absolutely have to get corner help. Like, I think you can re-sign Jonathan Jones, but that's just a depth piece. I think the issue at 7 is, and this is just based purely on the public mock drafts, is that there's not a cornerback who is being mentioned in the top 10. You've got some guys here. The LSU kid. Hold on, I'm pulling up here.
So
Um,
I think he was at Virginia Tech and he was a transfer portal dude. If I have my LSU cornerbacks correct. My friend Kyle Thrush would absolutely be furious if I didn't mention that he went to Virginia Tech if I
Manslaughter.
have the right guy. I may not have the
Manslaughter.
right. Yeah, I did. Yeah, he went to Virginia Tech for 3 years and then transferred to LSU.
Yeah, and look, he may be the first corner off the board, and maybe a team like Cincinnati at 10 could be the first team that you would say. But again, I'm just basing it right now, and this is often like how I figure out my own mock draft stuff. Like,
By the way, he
I don't.
went to Archbishop Spalding for high
Oh,
school, the lane.
in Baltimore?
in Severed, Maryland. Like he
Yeah.
grew up in well, he was born in Silver Spring and then he played Archbishop Spalding, which is Baltimore area.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, look, they obviously have to get a cornerback, and this goes back to the point of if you trade down and get more stuff, right? Because as it stands right now, with 2 top 100 picks, those are the only 2 picks that you could say for next year, these guys should be able to come in and help in a significant way, perhaps. So let's just say you're talking pass rusher, receiver. Okay, well, now what are you doing at corner, right? You could do something in free agency? Who knows? So I don't think it's insane, but to me, that would be trade down to get corners rather than, and like it looks like there'll be like a handful of corners in the first round. How Washington ranks them, I don't know. But so I think that 7 to me would be probably go a trade down more than taking a corner there. But again, that's we're talking February 17th. The draft is still a ways off, and I don't know what Washington necessarily thinks of um of any of these guys.
Yeah, it's not a good just to kind of peek at the free agency class. I'm looking on Spotrac or Spot Rack. Have you figured that one
Dude,
out?
I've never understand.
Okay.
I assume
Uh,
it's either way. I don't still don't just don't know what it means.
I have no clue. I'm sure it means something very smart and fun,
Right.
but I have no idea.
Right.
This is the list, okay? This is according to their list. Trayvon Diggs is the first cornerback on that list who got cut by the Cowboys. Obviously, a local kid. Jamel Dean, who's 29 years old. Jimmy Ward, who's really a free safety, who's 35. Jonathan Jones is the fourth ranked cornerback on their list. Amik
Wait,
Robinson.
hold
Huh?
on. You're telling me that can't that Jonathan Jones is the 4th ranked cornerback?
Well, I'm looking at their list of who is the prospective free agents, and the list is horrific. I mean, it's like names.
Oh, you know what? I see what you're looking at here. It's ranked by previous AAV. If you hit on the market value
Oh,
column,
thank
that will
you.
shift it. And I've seen that Alontae Taylor from the Saints feels like the guy. He's listed 4th here, but it feels
Yes.
like he's the guy that may be the top corner out there. You also have like a Tariq Woolen from Seattle, who crazy athlete, but as we saw in the
But,
playoffs, has
like,
been
that's another
erratic.
like, okay, I would not touch him because he he had the best defensive coordinator, defensive mind in football, Mike McDonald, and it seemed like Mike McDonald was in and out on Tariq Woolen. Now, obviously, Woolen has been productive in his career. He is an athletic freak, all that good stuff. If Mike McDonald can't figure it out, I would feel, um, afraid as an organization to be like, obviously, we have our own arrogance and we have our own evaluation. We have our own system, blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't be that excited to jump in on that. So that's kind of, anyways, you do say you're right. Reorganizing the list, still the names are terrible. Nashon Wright is the top cornerback, and he's from Chicago. Chicago's defense was bad. Jalen Watson's pretty good. I actually like Jalen Watson
Well,
from Kansas City.
Chicago's secondary was pretty good. Like they led the league in interceptions. Their run defense was garbage, and you know, the, yeah, and also look, I think like you got to always look at fit. It's not NBA at all. I mean, it feels like more like you can just kind of roll guys out there and like kind of make it work. Football, as we see sometimes, some guys just don't work in some systems for whatever the reason, and the adjustment just is never there.
Yeah,
By the way, for what
like
it's worth, it
Julian Champagny didn't work in all systems, but he works in Will Weaver's motion offense. Is that what they do? The Wizards? Will Weaver?
is Will Weaver,
Isn't that the head coach for the Wizards?
Brian Keefe.
Oh, who is Will Weaver?
I know Troy Weaver was like he's now the
No,
GM of the Pelicans. I don't know
no.
who.
Will Weaver is a basketball coach. He's another terrible basketball coach. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
But for what it's worth, Daniel Jeremiah, 15 hours ago, tweeted there are a
Huh?
lot of day 2 starting cornerbacks in this draft. Now, I don't know if day 2 means round 2 more than round 3, but again, to
Right.
the point of trading down, can you get another pick there? Because then if you can, like again, like what you said before, if they think like Kedrick Falk, the pass rusher from Auburn, who athletically looks to be a monster, production wise, didn't do a lot, kind of like the guy the Bengals took last year. I was blank on his name.
Oh,
Um,
he was a Texas A&M kid who
yeah,
like
that's it.
he
Yeah.
held out. His last name Williams, maybe.
Nah, whatever. My memory is so shot. I know what I'm talking about, people. I just can't remember anything. But anyway, my point is that, like, so if they think Hedrick Falk is all that, they buy that the athleticism will translate to more production in the pros. Then, and also he had a pretty good year the previous year. Just this last year only had like 2 sacks. I think the year before he had like 7. But anyway, if you can trade down, I'm just making this up. The Rams at 13, who have a lot of picks. They're the F them picks team, and they clearly are a team that's on the Super Bowl cusp. Maybe they say, we want to go all up, forget somebody, they're willing to trade. And now you get Falk at 13. You get a second round pick from the Rams to take a corner and then, go receiver, whatever. Like that, these are the calculations that they're going to have to make. But again, free agency comes first. So this is why it is hard when you have so many holes as they do. It is just hard to figure out you know, this isn't like years where you're just like, hey, they just kind of need this thing.
Well, and I don't know why the Texans would necessarily do this, but the Texans have picked 28 and then the Commanders second round pick at 38. And it's like they are a classic team. They're a real contender. Besides CJ Stroud playing one of the worst playoff games in recent history, they have this defense that's awesome. And so, but they need this offensive line. The offensive line at the top of this draft is really strong, though I think the word is as you get later in the draft, it falls off pretty quickly. But I don't know that for sure. But like, okay, would you take 28 and the Redskins Commanders former second round pick at 38 for 7th overall? You may need probably something else out of that too. But like, would you be okay dropping down that far? Like down to the end of the first round. So what you're looking at is like Anthony Hill, who's a linebacker, really athletic from Texas. You're looking at like wide receivers like Casey Concepcion, Caleb Banks, who's a defensive tackle out of Florida, 6'6", 330. There's like, those are the TJ Parker's an edge out of Clemson at 23 right now, who's like, he was thought to be a top 10 pick and then the Clemson stunk this year. So like, that's always the interesting thing. And then you just have to figure out like, are we actually getting a good player or are we just getting more players? That would always be my thing. Are we getting a good guy or are we getting more guys? More
No, man.
guys doesn't mean better.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, again, the difference between this draft and the NBA draft is in the NBA draft, it's just like who are the best guys that we can put on the court that can make a difference. Here, like you can get the third defensive tackle off the board at 28. I'm not saying that they
Yeah.
need that, but you could get the second safety off the board at 28, maybe. You could get a linebacker. There will be offensive linemen, it looks like there, maybe even a pass rusher, because some guys like Cassius Howell from Texas A&M or TJ Parker from Clemson, maybe they're there. So that's why this draft is different. There's also a bunch of safeties, receivers. So it's you can get a starter at 28, where like the 28, like when people complaining about the Wizards trading 2 first-round picks for Anthony Davis in that deal, it's like, no, no, no.
Get out of here.
The 30th pick,
Get out of here.
the 30th pick in the first round of the NBA draft does not mean is not
And a
near the
top 20
value.
protected pick that turns into a second rounder.
Yeah.
Get out of here. Get out of here with that Michigas. I don't want to hear that.
Since I got a bolt at the top of the hour, let me just go
Me too.
bang through
Yeah.
some of these other questions. Matt asks, we're talking about unheralded free agents having a larger impact in Jones's defensive scheme. How about the development of some of the younger guys? He mentions Jordan McGee, Kay Madrano, Quan Martin, Tyler Owens. Certainly that, I said this, I think, with Kevin Sheehan today. I've done a lot of talking today about these things. Uh, I said, like, look, we can talk all we want about free agency in the draft. That can't solve all the problems. They're going to have some of their younger guys, particularly from that 2024 draft, step up. I think he didn't mention here Ben Sinnott, but I think that Ben Sinnott to me is a huge one. They drafted him in the second round. He's clearly a really, really good athlete, but he was not used even when Zach Ertz got hurt in a way that showed that he could do the job of being like that lead tight end. Can he be? I don't know, but like that to me is going to be a huge question there. If they move on from Bobby Wagner, I think Jordan McGee showed a lot of good with his athleticism and speed, but we didn't see him play the Mike linebacker. So for a lot of these guys, it is just they're going to have to do a lot more projecting than I wish they had to do because they didn't use some of these players late in the year. Quan Martin, boy, he really kind of fell off late. So that one becomes interesting. But, I don't want to go like because Durante Jones mentioned a lot of these guys that means anything. He just may have been mentioning guys on the team, which is reasonable.
Coaches
But
like to
yes, I
do that.
think
They like to name names. Yeah. They
yeah,
just like to
yeah,
say
and
names. Yeah.
we all eat it up to a degree. Oh, he mentioned this guy, so there is some of that. But yes, I 100% agree. They're going to need, and they didn't even mention Johnny Newton or potentially Brandon Coleman if Chris Paul leaves. So a lot of guys from that group, they probably need at least two or three to really step up in a significant way for Washington to help rebound, regardless of what else happens. Matt Vaughn, kind of in the same thing I was just saying. Did having Ertz hurt the development of Senate, i.e., how do you factor in vets versus the young guys?
Yeah. It was
Um,
a good thing that Zach Ertz got hurt. Ben said that to me off air. He was like, it's such a good thing that Zach Ertz got hurt. No, he never said that. Sinnott showed some things in the year. I saw, like, I know this is so lame. I think he's a fullback. I think he should basically be like playing in the backfield, motion tight end, H back, classic H back, because he can lead block, and I think he has some talent, and I'm excited to see him in a new offense because Cliff didn't really have much to do with him. Maybe it was just because Ben Sinnott's not good enough to do anything with, but I'm excited to see him in an offense, particularly the Detroit Lions. If there's any Ben Johnson that's bled through to the new Commanders OC, it's like that offense uses tight ends in such an interesting way. So, like, maybe this could be the Senate thing. I doubt he'll ever be like a star, but maybe he's, that like 400 yards per season, 4 touchdowns, but he's like kind of all over the field, blocking. You're using him in a bunch of interesting ways because I think he's like an athletic, aggressive dude. Uh, but he'll never. He's not George Kittle. There's an idea that maybe he could be the next George Kittle because of who was drafting him and his athletic profile.
yeah.
I don't think he's
And
that.
also, there was when Cliff when he moved on, and there was this story is out there about the riff was between Kingsbury and Peters. If you really look at it, obviously it didn't get a lot of traction. I'm pretty positive I know where that idea came from or who would put kind of putting that out there. But if I had to pick one player that sort of maybe would signal a rift between those two guys, Ben Sinnott might very well be that guy because it felt like a player that made sense for Peters based on what he was looking at San Fran and not necessarily on what Kingsbury wanted. And so that's the tough line for any GM to have to walk. But that could be an example of where it just didn't make sense for Kingsbury, but maybe it will with how David Blau sees the world. The great Tim Affat says that just, hey, despite the year one success, this feels like now this could be at least 3 off seasons before they can really get this squad going. They're just so short of young quality talent for a 53. I don't disagree with that, Tim, at all. This is why last year, in 2024, I kept saying, are we sure they're good? Like, I know they're winning, but are we sure they're good? Because they just had so many holes. And then when people were like saying last year, oh, they went all in with all these trades, I'm like, no, they didn't go all in. They're trying to get up. They're trying to like get the level of the talent to a reasonable point. And so, yeah, I agree that Adam Peters is going to have to run the table here, have a just brilliant offseason, and get some of these picks he's already made guys to step up because based on what we see, they don't have enough. And they may be a couple of years away from not having enough. Again, goes to the point of why trading down may make some sense because they need to not just get more help for this season. They need to get more help going forward for the rest of Jaden Daniels' run here. Not the totality of the run, but the next few years. So yeah, I don't think Tim is wrong, and it's a depressing thing to say, and most people don't want to admit that because it's not fun to suggest, oh, they're not going to compete this year. Which who
Well,
knows? I didn't think they'd compete in 2024, so I'm not going to say it's impossible. But yeah, they definitely
yeah,
have a ton of holes.
I don't. They're not going to have enough firepower. I know we have to go soon to win the Super Bowl, but that doesn't necessarily mean if they don't win the Super Bowl, it's not a bust. Like, just look around their division. Harbaugh goes to the Giants. Who knows? Could be good, could be bad. The Eagles are such a there's so much going on with that team. Stoutland leaving, coaches coming in, coaches leaving, players when they get traded. Who knows what to talk about there? And then obviously the Cowboys had a good offensive season. Their defensive season was not as good. They're an interesting team, but like, so like you don't know what the mix is when the schedule comes. Like obviously we know who they're playing, but so the reason why they were so good in 24 is that they played nobodies. And why 25 was so hard is that they played a bunch of really good teams and then they got injuries. It's just football, we just don't have that sense. We don't know. So this having Jaden healthy, if Jaden's healthy and the offense is competent, how much worse could the defense be? You know, how much worse? I've
Right.
said that before as a Commanders Redskins fan, and it keeps getting worse. But like, I'm going to keep charging forward. So, I'm not putting away them winning the division. That could happen. Why is that impossible? That's not impossible. Let's just say that.
No, here, and to your point, Cameron Smith here mentions like, in terms of like saying it's fair to say that maybe Quinn and Peters are facing some sort of urgency here to get this to not just win, but to save their job. What record do they need to have for them to be comfortable? To me, the record may not matter as much as it just about being competitive. Say what you want about the Giants this year, but they had a lot of games where they were winning most of the game and then they blew it late for whatever the reason. That 8-game losing streak was so depressing. It wasn't just the 8 in a row. It was that they got destroyed in so many of those games. 4 games in a row losing by at least 20 points, whatever the stat was like that, no, almost no teams have done that and forever
Yeah.
years. Like that was embarrassing. That to me, you can't have anything even remotely that. You can get 6 wins. That would not be good. People would complain. I totally get it. But like if Jaden looks the part and he is healthy and whatever they do, say in the first round, that player looks like a piece, et cetera, and they just fell short. I mean, again, the Kansas City Chiefs are picking ninth this year, right? So Washington and the Kansas City Chiefs basically had the same season in terms of total where it ended up. Obviously, the Chiefs are a heavyweight. So I don't think record matters to me as much as competition, but obviously you got to win. Last topic here, and then we got to go. Have to bring this up with Mike. Washington has already retained one of their players.
Yeah, I know.
They have retained none other
Uh,
than Hunter Tressway, a guy that Mike is
listen,
labeled as, I don't know, I don't wanna put
wait,
words in your mouth, but, like, overrated, you can't stand him.
no, no, no. No, it's not that he's over. He's the canary in the coal mine. If we talk about Trustway, that means the season's going wrong. If he's the team MVP, which it felt like he was one year,
They're the
if he's
one
the
Pro
lone
Bowl
Pro
selection.
Bowler, yeah,
Yeah,
if he's the lone Pro Bowler, then that's been a bad season. And typically, Tress has been that. I'm very happy for him and his family. Seems like a swell guy. I never want to hear him talk because if he's talking, that means the season is not going well. Um, Congrats on his contract extension. I can't wait till I don't have to care about the punter as much as I'm told I have to care about the punter. Um, it's been great for him. I just, if punters are talking, the season's not going well. That's all.
well, look,
All there is.
2024, one of the storylines was that he didn't punt for several games, right? And last year, he punts enough that he goes to the Pro Bowl. So you're
Exactly.
you're not wrong in terms of that. I just thought it was funny that, the guy who gets talked you don't like them talking about is the one guy that they've kept so far.
I just am so happy for him. So happy. I never want to hear him talk. I never want to. I just don't. I'm sorry. He's a great guy. So but don't want to hear him talk.
All right.
Okay.
If you want to hit up Mike, he like Fernando Mendoza, he lives on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Find Mike there. Anything else we need to know about your world?
No, I'm developing the next great wave of podcast, Ben. Just you wait. Signed a new client almost. Very excited about it. So I'll tell you more later. It's
Fantastic. All
Bill
right.
Simmons. I'm gonna produce Bill Simmons'
Oh,
spot. No, no.
congrats. Great.
Trying to help
Yeah.
him. Trying to help the guy out a little bit.
Yeah, he needs a break. All right. Well, thanks everybody here for doing this as always. A lot of you were in here. Great questions. I so appreciate it. I'll just make a quick note here. If you haven't seen yet, I threw a survey into your inbox just to get a better feel for what's going on with what you guys think about the site, where areas I could improve, some thoughts I have about what to do, and of course, some questions about the team. So if you got 5 minutes to take a look at that, that would be fantastic. And if you've already done it, thank you for doing that, and thanks for being here as always. Um, but that's it. I'm gonna roll. I gotta go do something else here. But you guys rock. Also, check out the podcast. I'll have another one out today for sure. And if you missed the one I did on Monday with Al Galdi going through free agency, while the players are a little bit depressing, I'm with you. The conversation was fun. So check that out. Cool, cool. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it, gals, guys and gals. Appreciate it. Catch you guys later.